My name is Kenneth Yakpaolo Best, and I'm a son of Percival, Hakata, and Snapper Hill, Monrovia. I always introduce myself as a poor boy from Percival, Hakata, and Monrovia. My parents were George Stanfield and Lillian Best, Lillian Porte Best, the sister of Albert Porte and Christian Porte and Sarah Porte, the three Porte siblings. That's my introduction. I was born in Harrisburg, Montserrat County, just down the street from Pleasantville. It was a Lutheran mission. That's where the Lutherans from America first started their work in Liberia, Harrisburg, on the St. Paul River. And later on, the Lutherans moved their work to Porte in Bong County, and later to Squacoco, also Bong County, where they established the Phoebe Hospital, which was transferred from Harrisburg to Squacoco. Later on, they moved the hospital, they moved a branch of the hospital to Zozo, Lofa County, but they never left Squacoco. And that's where they built in Squacoco one of the most modern hospitals in West Africa, called again Phoebe Hospital. So Phoebe Hospital comes into play in this story because that's where I was born, but not in Squacoco, but in Harrisburg, down the street from Pleasantville, also on the St. Paul River. His name was John Porte, our great grandfather, and he was the grandfather of Albert, Lillian, Sarah, and Christian Porte, 4 children. And Albert remained in Pleasantville and inherited a homestead in Pleasantville. There was a decision between him and my mother because our grandmother, Frederica Stewart, Frederica Porte, Lillian married a man from Trinidad and Tobago. His name was George Stanfield Best. It was my father. They had 5 children. The first was Muriel, our big sister. Muriel, Muriel Best. Second was Sybil. He married a fellow called ferocious deer. And they had several children. The first was Butte, Yvonne, she she was the eldest. He married a Nigerian-born Liberian called Julius Adigidi. Second child was Brenda C., who lives in the States right now. The third was Maureen C. The fourth was Rodney C. The fifth, George C. The name of our father, George Best, George C. Two of the children look after their uncle, me, became journalists. Maureen, who was the first, studied at Cuddington in Swakoko and became, when we started the Daily Observer in 1981, started corresponding with the Daily Observer. That's how she became journalist. Grandfather was a man called Conrad, Conrad. He was also country companion. His parents were born in Barbados, West Indies. He was born in Liberia. I have a place in Portugal called Porte. That's where my grandfather built his house. Lillian agreed that the house in Kosovo, Port Hill, would go to Albert, because he and his wife had 11 children. So the best place for them was not Monrovia, but Kosovo, where they could make a farm and raise and feed all those children. The mother, the Porte, inherited from her parents a house on Snapper Hill, Broad Street, Monrovia, just below the lighthouse. So young, you don't know the lighthouse. But it's at the top of Cape Massimo, overlooking the Atlantic Ocean.
That's where Ducor is.
Yeah,
That's where the Ducor is. You stand on that hill, and you can see the ships coming to Monrovia, settling at the free port of Monrovia. It was built in 1948. So we grew up, millions of children grew up on Snapper Hill, Broad Street, Monrovia. That's where I grew up too. It was first a dental clinic. That's why the house was so big. It was built by our grandfather, He was a dentist. He built that big house. Well, it was a dental clinic. And the adjoining portion of the house, behind the house, was a half lot. She left that half lot to Christian, their younger brother. So the house on Snapper Hill was left to Albert and Lillian. Albert told her, Sister Lillian, I have many children. I can't live in Monrovia. I have to live in Closerville, where we can make a farm to feed all those children. You take the house in Monrovia and raise your family. That's how Lillian got that house. The half lot behind the house was willed to Christian. Unfortunately, he went and sold it to another woman who was not a member of the family. So Lillian, after our father George S. Best died in 1945, April 13, I think, the same day Franklin D. Roosevelt died. You can do the research. So they died the same day. Lillian moved the family to Closerville, where my father is buried, right in the Christ churchyard. That's where the cemetery of the Episcopal Church is. The church was there, but later on, they moved the church to Lemongrass Street. And that's why we go to church every Sunday. Christ Episcopal Church, same name.
What's your favorite memory of your mother?
He used to cut my butt.
They cut everybody but so what else? So you must have been bad.
He raised me to become a responsible man. I did all her work in the house. Scrub the floor every Saturday. Buy the market from Waterside. Buy the fish from the beach. Serve her in the garden. We had a garden right opposite the house. And I was a garden boy. I was the floor scrubbing boy. We had a frame house with a plank floor. So every Saturday, my job was to scrub the floor with coconut hull and soap. I would kneel down on my knees and scrub that floor every Saturday. I was also a market boy. My sisters never went to the waterside to buy a market. They went to the waterside, which was then the shopping center of Closerville. Benson Street was there, but it didn't become the shopping center until the late 50s, early 60s. The shopping center was waterside. My sisters used to go to the waterside to buy only their clothes and shoes. But that was the shopping center at that time in Monrovia. But I was a market boy. I had to go to the waterside every Saturday to buy the fish on the beach, not far from the waterside, to buy all the groceries, potato grains, cassava leaf, cabbage, honey, and the bigger fish from the beach, which was next to the water side. And so that was part of my job on Snapper Hill. We had a pencil pot.
I was going to ask you about it. A
We had
clay
a pencil
pot.
pot.
A
A
clay
pencil
pot.
pot. Yes. In the corner, the back corner of our house. After bringing all the bath water and washing water and all that, I had to bring the water for the pencil pot. So that was the drinking water. This clay pencil pot, black, kept the water cool. And so my job was to fill it every morning and every evening. I was my mother's market boy, water boy, clothes scrubbing boy, garden boy, and of course, errand boy. She sent me all her errands. And we had men and women in the house. On Snapper Hill, it was a big house. So she rented some of the rooms to other women. And I became their errand boy and market boy. So if you think I'm fairly successful as a man, that's where I got my beginnings. I learned to work in that house on Snapper Hill. That's where I learned to work very hard. He made me a responsible man. Why? How? Because he made me the workhorse of the house. My mother refused to get a boy. Unlike all the other women in Monrovia, they all had boys working for them, staying with them, and doing all the dirty work. I had 5 sisters. I was the oldest boy. 2 brothers came later, Kelvin and Keith. But I was the eldest boy, and therefore I had to do all the work, all the dirty work. My sisters only cooked, washed the dishes, and washed their clothes and my mother's clothes. The rest of the work in the house was mine. So that's how Lillian made me a man, a responsible man. Whenever I went with her to her friends, and they had something to give her to carry, something on the heavy side, they would say to her, Lillian, I got this bunch of bananas for you. Where's your boy? He said, that's my boy. No, I mean your boy, because looking at Kenneth best, they saw my father, whom they knew, because they said I was a spitting image of my father. So they knew I was her own son. So they would tell her, no, I mean your boy. That's my boy. I remember my mother many times pointing her index finger at me and saying, that's my boy. That's one of the things she did for me. She refused to get a boy in the house. Do all the dirty work. Cut the wood, put the water, scrub the floor, clean the yard. He made me who I am, who I became. Because if she had been lenient with me, I wouldn't have turned out to be the kind of man I am. He didn't spare the rod on me. He whipped my butts. And when I became too old, teenager, to call other men in the house. You know what I used to do? You ever heard the term? Me with two men holding my hands in front and two men holding my feet in the back. That time. So I have my own children. I used to beat them too. Our people didn't like that. So I grew up. 1955. A wealthy man in Morocco, one of our Snapper Hill neighbors, who on Snapper Hill. Snapper Hill is from Mecklin Street, and where the Parker House was, opposite where the finance minister is. From there up was called Snapper Hill. You know why it was called Snapper Hill?
Mhm.
Why?
You say if I know why it was called Snapper Hill, maybe they used to bring a snapper fish up there to sell.
Exactly.
Really? I just guessed.
The hill was just on top of the Cape Mesolado, just from waterside. So when the people got the fish from waterside, the first place they came was to that hill to sell their snappers. So it's closest to the waterside. And that was the beginning of Monrovia, Cape Mesolado, where the Ducal became, was built. Remember that? Ducal Palace Hotel?
Yes.
Okay. That was the hill. Who were on that hill? Well, just beneath the hill. On Norris Street and Snapper Hill, North Street. Norris because where the Ducal became, it's called Porte Norris. It was where they had a gun. So it was a fort, top of that hill. That's where Matilda Newport first fired her shot. Her first job working for my Sunday school superintendent. As soon as we got to Monrovia in 1946, 47, my mother sent Genevieve and myself Sunday school. Where is the Sunday school? You know what Trinity Cathedral is? Okay. Just before you got to the spot on which they built the cathedral was Trinity Church. And before you got to Trinity Church, there was a building there, a frame building. And that's where I went to Sunday school.
So your siblings, starting with Muriel, your
Miriam,
eldest, then
Sybil,
Sybil, then
Bella,
Meryl,
Kenneth,
you,
I was the fourth. And
Genevieve.
Genevieve, fifth. 5 children by
Five.
my father.
Yeah.
My father died in 45. My mother connected with another man for whom she had 3 children in Patrick's elementary school. When I started there, it was also the high school. I started in 1947, ABC.
Mhm.
1954, when I was in 7th grade, the Catholics moved to Patrick, Capitol Hill
The time was in the elementary school, right?
Elementary School. It was the first years of elementary school.
That's before it became a high school.
Our first 4 classes I did in 2 years. 46, 47. 48, I started 8th grade. I started 1st grade. So I graduated from the 8th grade in 1955, November. The following year, I went to Liberia. After my father died, 1940, my mother kept Muriel, Sybil, terror because of it. With the White Plains, against the Methodist, he brought Genevieve and me to Monrovia. And we stayed with our cousin, Ellen Sandeman. At the time she was Ellen Spiker. You know Ellen Sandeman?
I remember her. I
She became
remember
the first, she was the mayor of Monrovia.
Yeah,
The
I
first
remember
woman
very
mayor of
well.
Monrovia.
Mhm.
Stayed in a house at the Fort, Ashman Street. Across Ashman Street, on Johnson Street, came to where the bridge came. Our cousin, Ellen Sandeman,
Yes. Okay.
he was from Elizabeth.
Mm-hmm.
She married an older man called Mr. Stryker. He was a carpenter. And she had two sons for him, J.U., the elder, and Victor. He let Genevieve and me stay with cousin Ellen. In the corner of Richmond and what? Johnson Street.
Johnson Street.
So we stayed there for a few months. My mother went to Canada, seven things out, and moved us, Genevieve and me, Snapper Hill, Broad Street, where he inherited that house from her mother, Victor Porte. My uncle, Albert Porte, published a newspaper in Pleasantville called the Pleasantville Observer. He had a few people to help him with that job. The first was Old Man Weeks, the father of Rushford, Jimmy, and Anthony. And they had a sister called, first was called Aurelia. And the second was called Edith. Edith. Hey. And Edith worked for Tesco in Paris. They had all these boys. Jimmy, J. Milton Weeks, who became Minister of Colbert, became Minister of Finance. And then you had Rushford, who became President of the University of Liberia. And you had Anthony, who started all the enterprises, the uniform. I worked for my first job in my first job in Monrovia was at the United Nations Information Center on Broad Street, just up the hill, where Afroland Bank is now. My first job was on that spot. My Sunday school superintendent man called Jacob Henry Brown. He was a superintendent, the legendary superintendents. Religious Sunday school. I grew up. My mother sent us to that Sunday school in 1947. With Jacob Brown was superintendent. As soon as I got to Sunday school, I started taking part in their program. And I remember distinctly the first program that I volunteered to participate in 1947 was a program on first Sunday. Every first Sunday we used to have a program. That's how Jacob Brown raised the young people in Sunday school by getting them to take part in programs, speaking, acting, singing. So the first Sunday, I volunteered to do a recitation. So my mother told me on Saturday, after I came from the market, buying all the groceries for the week, come and recite the recitation that you're going to recite tomorrow in Sunday school. We're sitting near the back door and I put some stuff. So I got up erect and began to speak. Drive the nail the right, boys. Hit it on the head. Strike with all your might, boys, till the irons bend. Now my mother again. Started shouting. Where's the nail? Where's the nail? Drive the nail the right, boys. The head. Strike with all your might, boys, till the irons bend. And guess what? Never had public speaking. Only lesson. We had many people living in our house on top of here. Most of them were renting. It was a big house. And when I got to speaking the way she had taught me to speak, everybody in the house started clapping. It was my first and only Sunday, next day, to my rest station. The people didn't stop clapping until I was well back into my seat. Today, I the Sunday school, Miss Kenneth best. That began public speaking. Always used to tell us, whatever your hands find to do it well. Never forget that.
My name is Baisama Winning Best. It's four words. Two of them are the first two are my first name, Baisama, It means coming of a gift. It's a kind of a Bundy heritage name. Uh, you don't find a name by too often, but the people who carry that name are somewhat distinguished. So um, you've heard of By Moore, and I think besides that, you don't really hear many other people with that name. So I'm humbled. I know that name carries a lot of responsibility, and I've been knowing that for a long time. Gwenning is also a Bandi name, but it also has a different translation in Pele. In Bandi, it means instruments, like a musical instrument. I mean, yeah. So if you it depends on how you pronounce it. If you pronounce it Gwenning, then it means instrument, almost like a guitar kind of thing, like a string instrument. But if you pronounce it Gwenning, then in Pele, it means stone or rock. And that was the intended meaning, because my mother grew up around in Bon County where she was born. But her people came from Bundyland, which is the area between Lofa and what is now Bapalo. That's middle area there. Yeah, they left after some, some travel wars in there, and they moved and settled against along the St. Paul River in a place called Hindy. Quenta, Hindy, two towns that are just adjacent to each other. That's where they were. So yeah, sorry, it's a dragonfly. So that's the origin of my name, and then of course Best is the family name. My mother is May Jean Best. She is the daughter of Byron and Margaret Traub. Margaret Traub, well, Margaret was a steward, and so it's like it's almost like uh, it's probably, we haven't researched it. I'm not sure we researched it yet, but so because Sarah Porte, who is his your aunt, right? Married a Stewart, and apparently Margaret Stewart and Sarah's husband from the same family. So it's very interesting how it came around that way. The other convergence about Margaret is that she became a journalist. She had her own radio program on ELWA, was it? And she published a literacy magazine called New Day. So for those of us generations later, we find ourselves in this thing here and still trying to navigate it, knowing that it is 100% in our blood, and we have to understand what that means for us, because it's not something that we can escape easily. I tried to escape journalism because I felt that the work of a journalist was way too demanding on family life, and I felt that for the longest time it took away the opportunities that I would have had to know my father and my mother as a child. It's really only in the last, let's say, 20 years that I've had a chance to really have real conversations with my father, and and get to know why he does things the way he does them. I mean, you get to know his mindset by the way he has directed the family over the course of time. But really, just getting to know him as a person, and knowing his friends, and we never knew who Daddy's friends were back in the day. okay, we knew Willis Knuckles, we knew
Stop it.
James Tapper, we knew Prince Page, but those guys were not around very often. I went to school with the Knuckles kids, and but the Tapper kids were way older than us, and Prince Page had left the country long time. So we only knew about these people through stories. The stories that Daddy told us from BWI, from his time at BWI when they had a jolly good time in the Glee Club and all this stuff. So those were his friends, but we didn't experience them in person. You see. So anyway, that was my perception towards journalism. That look, if this thing here causes you to be away from the people you love, and the people who should matter most, and you're doing this for the sake of the country, I think the choices are pretty clear. So we saw the times when he was jailed. We saw the times when the paper was burnt down, and I was like, look, I'm not having the first chance I get of this. So but grew up having a strong passion for the communication arts in general. Every Christmas we had our job was to put on this Christmas play in our front yard and in Painesville, and we got all the neighborhood kids together. I led the acrobat team, and so from my few experiences watching and Jacob Duet, you remember Jacob Duet, famous acrobat. He led the cultural troupe on many international tours, and they won awards
Wow.
primarily because of his acrobatic prowess. So he tells a story about me watching Jacob do it on TV once, walking on his hands, and then a few minutes later, I was there doing the same thing. And I can still walk on my hands now. I probably won't do it on video now.
Because of my information background,
Ministry of Information.
Minister of Information, built the cultural center. I used to take the children to the cultural center whenever we had a program. And one day I took them there, and Jacob Joy was there, walking on his hands, with his 2 feet in the air behind him. You can't imagine what happened after that. Can you? To the house. The Painesville Commission. That's why our house. As soon as we got inside the house and climbed the steps to enter, I got down on his 2 hands. This was immediate. As soon as we entered the house, I climbed the steps, put his 2 hands to the floor, with his 2 feet in the air. That's how I walked.
I think it came quite naturally. I did not, I thought it was more exciting. I probably felt, I was probably too young to really remember all those details at the time. But so he's telling that story, and I just have to defer to that narrative. But from the times that I was conscious about that skill, I always found excitement and joy doing that. So we had our acrobatic team. Then we had people who performed the Christmas play, with the shepherds and the Mary and the baby and all of that. And people will come off also doing poems and recitations and songs and things like that. So it was a whole production that that we put together. And it happened together. It happened in our front yard every year for at least probably 5 years. Everybody in the community looked forward to it.
We were living in a place in Painesville called Boca Mission. That's where we started. Every Christmas, we put on a program. And all the neighbors send their children. That's where started the neighborhood.
Yeah. So anyway, so that was my beginning in these communication arts. Along the way, I took an interest in music. I took an interest in, Daddy always taught us how to sing. He taught us how to sing. He taught us how to make harmony with our voices. And so we would learn all his BWI Glee Club songs, all those spiritual steal away. Oh my good Lord, show me the way. Huh? Which one of the Glee Club songs was your favorite?
Moving up the King's Highway.
Moving
Oh Lord, I'm moving up the King's Highway.
Moving up,
Just keep running up the
moving up,
shining way.
moving up,
Sit
moving
on
up,
my back,
moving up,
Jesus trying
moving
to
up,
pull me back,
moving
but
up,
I'm moving up the
moving
King's
up, moving
Highway.
up, moving up,
Lord, I'm moving up the King's
moving up, moving
Highway.
up, moving up,
Running
moving
up
up,
the
moving up,
shining way.
moving up,
Sit
moving
on
up,
my back,
moving up,
Jesus trying
moving
to
up,
pull me back,
moving up,
but I'm moving up the King's
moving up,
Highway.
moving up. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
oh my goodness.
kind of background, that was my introduction to what you might call communication or media arts, so to speak. One point in high school, I went to high school in the Gambia because after the paper got burnt down in Liberia, and before the paper got burnt down in Liberia, we knew that Doe and his men were looking for Daddy, and Daddy was out of the country by then, and so we made arrangements to, he and my mom made arrangements to move to Ghana temporarily until we, understood, found our bearings, and then they decided to eventually settle in Gambia, and we got to the Gambia together, and they decided to start the newspaper there. Again, it was a very, very tedious affair putting this thing together because the Gambia did not have a daily newspaper at the time. They never believed that a daily newspaper was possible. They felt that they felt that the Gambian society was largely illiterate, at least 70% illiterate, and therefore there was not a market. There wouldn't be a market for a daily newspaper. They also felt that the Gambian society was a polygamous society. So you wouldn't have, the question was, who will tell dirt on the other person because everybody's so related, and the fact that there had never been a daily newspaper, so people felt that it could never be done, right? There was a weekly and there was a monthly, and that was it, right? So when he started this, he started training the people for it, and showing them how to do it. This activity for about 2 years you require stamina to do this kind of thing in an environment like the Gambia for the first time, and even in Liberia. In Liberia, they were coming home around probably 10 o'clock at night, but in the Gambia, they were coming home at literally 5 in the morning, right? And so I never again, if I thought I saw them just at bedtime in Liberia, I only saw them when I was waking up to go to school, or they're probably just about going to sleep when I was waking up to go to school. So you might imagine again, I was like, look, I'm not I'm not having this. Granted, they pay school fees and stuff like that, but you know, uh, is it worth it? So I had made up my mind earlier that this is not something I want to do. So when we left Gambia and went to the States and uh, started planning my college career and so forth, I wanted to do something completely different from journalism, from media in general. Um, I, I was really interested in architecture, you know, and I was something I was trying to sort my courses out to do that. But then you know the the Lord has a sense of humor, and He has His way of getting you back to where you belong. And you know, landed in Los Angeles with my aunt Genevieve and her husband Mamadi, Uncle Mamadi, Joseph Mamadi Dover. And Jen worked at a church. She led the church's. It's a Presbyterian church, and she led the church's food pantry. Okay, she did a very good job there, and you know, I was computer literate early enough, so I used to help her write her reports for the church, for the food pantry. How many jars of peanut butter were given away, and how many sandwiches were served, and all this other stuff. How many bills of used clothes were given to the homeless people, and so forth and so on. And so, uh, you know, just having her put those things together and hanging around the food pantry with her, I met this guy by the name of Mitchell Moore, who ran a youth center at the floor above the food pantry at the church. This youth center uh, had an annual theater arts project where young kids like us would get together. We would write our own plays and perform and direct and perform in them. And he would bring all these actors and directors from Hollywood, which is right down the street, and they will come and give us professional level training in acting, music, and dance. And I'm like, okay, well, from our Christmas play activities way back 15 years ago, you know, I'm in the right zone for this kind of thing, and I think I could make my break in Hollywood. And I made my mark. That was when I wrote my first song and my first set of poems, and also we and I had my debut in acting in like real you know acting, standard acting. Point so that's where I started real serious acting. I did that for about 3 or 4 years throughout my time in Los Angeles. And then when I moved to college in Santa Barbara, is a Christian 4-year liberal arts college called Westmont College. Uh, they have a strong theater arts program, and I thought that that's where I was gonna be. I started off as a business major, and then took music as a minor. But then I scrapped all of that because I took this one course called Messages, Meaning, and Culture, and it was the beginning of my communication studies major. And so I'm thinking to myself, yeah, this is really what I'm supposed to be doing, but I'm not going to become a journalist. So, how like people say you stay long inside, but you'll keep going there. So, um, I learning about public discourse and getting into the real philosophy of it and everything behind it. Um, uh, Learning rhetoric and all of this stuff that comprises why people say the things they say, why people do the things they do, and the messages behind them, whether they're subliminal or whether they are intentional, right? Or anywhere in between. So graduated from college. I started working. My internship was done at a PR firm. Well, no, my internship was done at a at an organization called the Santa Barbara Dance Alliance, and I was just basically doing all the press releases and the publicity for their shows, their dance shows. And they had a number of different shows, some for teens, some for professional level dancers. You know, Santa Barbara is a community of artsy fartsy kind of people, you know, so people do swing dance and ballet and jazz, all of that. So uh, did that, and then that landed me my first job out of college at a public relations firm that did public relations only for entertainers. They call them McFadden and McFadden Entertainment PR. And so that was my first job. And then so I started running the circuit. All the major theaters in the city are using us to promote their shows with the newspapers and the TV stations and the radio stations, and arranging all these interviews. And you know, I'm getting closer and closer into journalism, but I'm staying on the fringes of it. And you know, then you know, at a certain point, I'm like, look, you know what? I got to get out of here. Santa Barbara is too slow paced. At the same time, my parents, who were living in uh, Silver Spring, Maryland, you know, were missing me, and they were like, "Why don't you try to come home?" I'm like, "I'm enjoying it out here. I'm right close to the beach. I'm doing my own thing, this and that." I say, "Hey, my man, look, your parents spent much time with you before, and so it's time for you to come, at least come be with your parents more." I said, "Okay." You know, they put some of my cousins behind me. They said, "Look, there's nothing wrong with moving home." You know, I'm 22 years, 21, 22, no, 22 years old, 20, almost 24 years old, and they're like, "Yeah, move home." Okay, so I gave it a thought, and I was like, "Okay, fine, let me give it a shot." I went, and uh, we, you know, I went and walked into a conversation of them getting ready to restart the newspaper in Liberia. Okay, the war is just about to end. This is 2003, so the war is just about ending. They have signed a peace accord, and Judy Bryant is now, the head of state, the transitional government. And you know, at one point, Judy Bryant visits the Washington, and he's meeting with all the U.S. State Department people and so forth and so on. And we go to visit him, and every step of the way, people are asking, "So, Mr. Best, when are you starting? When are you coming back to start the paper?" Even some of the State Department people have been asking Daddy, "Look, it's time for democracy to return to Liberia. The U.S. has this agenda, but we need a media outlet that can really help champion the cause." And for a while, they seemed like they were interested in helping us get started, but then they kept, giving us a runaround. And so we're like, so Daddy was like, "Look, you know what? We're not going to wait for these people," because it took almost a year trying to, get meetings with them and so forth, and it never really happened. So Daddy was like, "Okay, you know what? We're going to find another way. It's going to be a drastic way, but we're going to find a way to make this happen." And that's how they were able to get the paper started in June. Yeah, restarted in June of 2005. That's the election year. Is that by this time I've gotten heavily involved in the church. We're doing my girlfriend and I are doing uh, uh, a ministry there with the youth group in the church. We're growing the church's youth group from the pastor's 5 kids to 75 kids now, from the local high schools, the public high schools, and so forth. And so, and then by this time, 2005, we had just taken these kids on a mission trip to South Africa. Okay, so it's about a 3-week trip. And then I come back, and my mom says, "Has your dad called you?" I'm like, "Nope." She said, "Well, call him." I said, "For what?" She said, "Well, you call him." I said, "No, let him call me." But the thing here is that, again, God has a sense of humor. If you've been away from the continent for ever so long, and I have been away from the continent since 2000, since 1994 up to 2005, and I go back to the continent, come back to the continent, and it's about 11 years since I've been away from Africa. All right, I'm in South Africa, and look, the sights, the sounds, the food, you name it. Look, when the bug bites you, you can't stay away. I don't care where on the continent you go, right? And that's what happened to me, really. And so as I came back, my church had a $40,000 job, $45,000 job waiting for me, because now we had done all this work building the youth group, and we did not, and now we needed to put more full-time effort into it than me having my day job and then coming to the church in the evenings and so forth. That wasn't going to work. So I had this job waiting, and it's like a sweet deal because it's $45K. I got full medical. I'm tax-free because it's a church, and all of this, and I'm ready to just kind of jump into it. And mommy says, "Call your pa." So eventually daddy called me, and I'm driving home from the church, and he says, "Your mom told you anything?" I said, "Well, she told me that you're going to call me. So what's going on?" He says, "Well, I'm here in Liberia." I was like, "Yeah, I know." He says, "I want you to come and join me." And before that, the whole time I had been, somebody had been tugging at me, saying, "Look, you need to get yourself back on the continent. Whatever it is you got to be doing, you got to get yourself back there." And I knew it was the Holy Spirit telling me, "Look, you really need to get back. You need to it's time for you to go to Liberia." I wasn't going to go back to South Africa. I don't have any connections there. It's Liberia that I need to go back to. And so, that's where, so it was a quick, it wasn't a very quick decision. It wasn't a very long decision to make. And knew I did not want to stay in the United States any longer. So in 2010, when I was going to Washington D.C. to meet to have the meeting with Obama and the Young African Leaders Forum, I had to apply for a visa, and they asked me at the visa consulate. They said, "Well, man, don't you have a green card?" I said, "Well, you tell me." I applied for the thing, they never gave it to me. So, so the guy said, "Okay, you know what? Everything you're telling me, I'm seeing it right here on my screen. How you refuse to get American citizenship." Yeah. Anyway, so that's the long and short of it. But I came to Liberia in 2005 to join my dad to help with the paper. The other thing he didn't tell me was that the ticket that I came on was a one-way ticket. And so after 3 months, when I was trying to find my way back and kind of go and collect some of my other stuff and maybe consider coming back, he was like, "This is it, buddy." Anyway, so, but those first 3 months gave me an opportunity to gain an appreciation for the kind of work that journalists do, especially in this part of the world. It was by no means the tumultuous, throes of press muzzling, and jailings and excuse me, and arson attacks that took place during the 80s and parts of the 90s, where journalists were attacked from left, right, and center. This time, you're dealing with a president like Madam Sirleaf, who's a lot more, open-minded to free speech and a lot more accepting of those principles. And it gave the entire media landscape a renewed sense of hope, right? But the media itself at the time was still very stuck in new ways of operation. To make money as a newspaper publisher, you had to, do pay for play. For most newspapers, no stories went into the paper without being paid for, and that went against the tenets of credible journalism, where you would have to, where you don't let anything influence the truth that you're trying to provide in your pages. So, it was a very strange environment for me to come to, because people felt that, okay, we are friends with the president, and so we have all this preference. Whereas we were only trying to do a professional job. And so all the international organizations and the government at the time and other groups would send us their advertisements because they knew that our publication, our newspaper, had the credibility to be associated with for their advertising. You see, so anyway, I used the opportunity to learn a lot, to learn everything there is to know about newspaper production. During the 80s, I spent my summers, my school vacations there at the paper. I started off in the layout department, and basically I was just playing around. Really, I was really just jumping around, swinging on the doors, jumping on the reporters' backs. I was just really, really, really playing, and I got paid. I got paid $25, 30, I think $35 every month, and the reporters were like, "This guy gets paid for play." And at the end of the month, my parents would take my salary and go buy my school supplies, and then I'll get vexed because it's like my money. I made this. Anyway, so yeah, it's look, in the Gambia, I really got into the work because one time the newspaper vendors in the Gambia started agitating for better commission. They were selling for the equivalent of about 60 cents, no 30, 60 cents, and they will keep about 20 or 30 or something like that, whatever it was. But basically, they were asking for a larger percentage in commission. And, it was too sudden for us to make that decision. And we needed time, but they said they wanted it now. And so they staged a strike. And so my aunt, who was the accountant, my mother's sister, Juanita, she called me from the house to the house. She said, "Look, bye. You need to come to the office now. You're going to go sell papers." I'm like, "Me? Sell papers?" And I thought it was a degrading thing because, I'm the CEO's son. Lesson learned. So I got there, and it gave me a bag of 350 newspapers. We go to town. They say, "Bye. You're going to go to town and you're going to sell these newspapers, and don't come back until this bag is empty." I'm like, goodness, man. What my friends going to be thinking about? I go to an international school. Okay, my parents are paying the equivalent of about $300 per term for my tuition, and that's huge, right? By all standards, because most other schools are charging half or less, and so it's a quite prestigious school, and I'm going to school with a lot of other international kids and some very high profile, kids of government ministers and so forth and so on, judges and you name it. So, I take the bag, I take a bus to town, and I'm standing there on the sidewalk for about 15 minutes trying to figure out how am I going to do this, and looking around to see if anybody knows me because I'm so freaking embarrassed. And so someone just told me, say, look, you know what? Cross the street, go to that Lebanese man's store. He's selling shoes. Offer him one paper to read and ask him to keep your bag while you take a handful and go and start selling. And that's what I did. And so within like 15 minutes, I came back for another batch. And within another 15 minutes, I came back for another batch. Within an hour and a half, standing right on like a city block, weaving in and out of traffic, I sold 350 copies, or 349 copies of the newspaper. When I was finished, I had my bag empty, a pocket full of money, and I made my way back to the office, my bag swinging on. Now, somewhere in between, met one of my friends walking through traffic because he lives in the city. He happened to be the nephew of our corporate lawyer, and he's like, "Bye, hey, what's up?" And he was like, "Man," he wasn't trying to folk me, right? But he was just excited to see me in town. He's like, "Hey, what's up?" I was like, "Yeah, what's up, man?" And I try to hide, but by then the shame had left, and I was making so much money I could care less about what was going on. I got back to the office, and the next day I was out there again, and I think I did it for about 3 or 4 days until those guys came back and resumed their work, and we found a settlement. Before selling the papers, I was actually a delivery boy in Gambia as well. So that I had a certain route, which was not in the city, but in the communities around the office, and I had to move around and deliver the paper and have everybody sign for it. So, I got myself involved in this enterprise at many different levels. Before we left Gambia, I covered a tennis tournament, and I did a little bit of writing for that. And at that point, we were short-staffed in the sports reporting department, so I was asked to cover for somebody, and I did. Come back to Liberia now. By that time, my writing has improved, and yeah. So it's it wasn't hard making a commitment to this enterprise, to this line of work, after all those experiences, because I knew what it took and I knew what we were trying to achieve, but I had to ask God for the strength, the stamina, the wisdom to really be able to be involved in this with a sense of purpose. You see what I'm saying? It hasn't been easy because because up to, let's say, last year, we were still having 3 a.m. Mornings, and the reason that happens is because we have to meticulously go through every single story and make sure that the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, that proofreading and so forth, and fact checking and so forth, which a lot of other newspapers won't do. They don't care for the news. They buy the paper to learn good English, right? So there's a lot of levels happening there. People want the information, but some people just want to learn proper English, and they can't really learn that in school because it's not all there. And if there are any mistakes in the paper, I'm the first person to call. You Kenneth, that's son. You're not supposed to be making those kind of mistakes. Okay, sorry, chief. We'll come. We'll correct it. So, but in terms of destiny, is not just my destiny, not just my family's destiny, but it's the country's destiny that we have a responsibility to help shape. There's a lot to say about that, and I'm sure by you doing this very documentary, you know what that means. You know what I mean by that. And I guess the best way to articulate it is to say that in our line of work, is called producing the first draft of history. Newspapers are considered the first draft of history. So it's very important to make sure that the information is accurate, is well contextualized, is clear to the point, and so forth, right? And that it's true, and that it presents the truth. Even the opinions that we publish must reflect the truth and be fair and all of that. Yeah. Yeah. Thank God for technology, because now this year we set up a new. So okay, I took over the paper in 2018 as managing director. He stepped back. Daddy stepped back, and was focusing on finishing a couple of books that he's been trying to write, and so forth and so on. And it was a very rocky start for me, because we had just gotten out of Ebola, and elections were very, very bad for the media because nobody spent money in the media, and so we're starting to run at a deficit, and then we start running into arrears with our staff, salary arrears, and so forth, and everybody's agitating, everybody's on a go slow and all of that. And I started to pray, and I said, Lord, you didn't put me here. The same thing I was running away from, you brought me here, and no, you didn't put me here to fail. And he started to show me things. The Holy Spirit started to show me things in dreams, visions, and even in broad daylight, and say, look, see what I see? And when you look closely, and if you're following the leading of the Holy Spirit, you get to see things that enable you to keep taking another step forward every step of the way. And long story short, we were able to bounce back nicely with our staff in terms of like settling some arrears and so forth. We're still working on the rest of it, but at least we're able to re-equip, retool the office, retrain. We're trying to retrain the staff and all of that, and it's working nicely. But one of the things I put in place at the beginning of this year was to make sure that people don't get taken away from their families like it happened in the 80s and 90s. I just got married in 2019, and now I have 2 kids, a boy and a girl, and my wife's like, your children never see you. Yeah. So and I'm gonna say I don't see you. You think I like it when I know the kind of work you're doing is important, but you go to work, you come home 3 o'clock in the morning, and what you expect for me to do? The bed is cold. Hey, Lord. All right. So thank God for the technology. He gave me the idea to do a work from home policy, or work from anywhere policy. So now, the problem with working from anywhere is that you need electricity and you need data. You need like internet. That's the 2 main things you need, and a good device to connect to the internet. So, but now, just in the last couple of years, the technology has improved to provide accessibility to certain tools that allow us. You can come home at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and stay here and monitor everything that goes on in the newspaper production from start to finish, and then still help my children with their homework, and still, spend time with my wife, and still do everything that needs to be done, and God gets the glory. So yeah, I think God has shown up for me again. I think He's shown me that this is where I'm supposed to be, and that if I remain committed, He will open up the doors and make every way possible for this venture to thrive. I think that so now, one of my passions now is to and I've had it for at least 10 years, is to train the next generation of Liberian journalists. Okay. Right now, I do that through mentorship and internships that I accept from students coming into my newsroom. Some of them I end up hiring, some of them go off and do other things like public relations, or they just finish their coursework in college and move on to something else. But it is very, very important to continue to train these people, because many journalists in Liberia start off in this profession straight out of high school. They do not have a chance to go to college until sometimes 5 years after they've entered the profession. So, we've seen that the ones that we take under our wing start off sometimes 2 to 3 years. Like they start thinking about college around 2 to 3 years, actually start working with us, which is good, because if they can make some money, and if we can give them the kind of flexibility because of the technology that we employ to make things happen, they don't have to sit down in the office all the time. They can multitask, and they learn that as part of our workflow. But at the same time, they're learning all the way we do it in terms of the etiquette, the way how you ask questions, the way how you formulate questions, the way how all these different things that are somewhat unspoken, in the journalism profession. This is not just asking the 5 W's and H, but there are things that go beyond that make a journalist come off as more professional than others, and make a journalist stand out apart from others. Is that I learned back in 2015. It just dawned on me back in 2015 that I think most Liberian legacy institutions, whether they're NGOs or businesses or whatever it is that are started by Liberians, right? Most of them do not survive beyond the lifespan of their founders. There are quite a few. There are quite a few organizations. And look, I talked to a Fula man once, and he was telling me, he says, "Why, started all these businesses. The guy had he made uniforms for AFL during those time. He had a thriving car rental business during Ellen time. He has properties on rent, all over the city of Monrovia, and so forth and so on. You name it. And he has all these holdings, all these businesses, all this wealth. And he's telling me, he says, "Bye, I have children. There's some in Europe, some in America, and none of them want to come back to take advantage of all of this." I'm like, you can give some of that to me. Then on the other hand, I will overhear my dad's friends telling him, "I mean, but Kenneth, you succeeded." And he'll be like, "What do you mean by that?" I said, "Well, you got somebody to take after you." And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I don't know about that. But, the more and more I thought about it, I came to this particular realization. And I'm like, look, all the other people, some of them are his age and they're still holding on to whatever they have going on. hoping that somebody would be able to carry it on. Do you know what it means that your legacy can live after you? And you can be sure that it's put in good hands. So, you know, transitions are important. But I think you got to pray for people. You got to pray for the people who would be there to hand the baton to transition to, and be able to take it to another dispensation. You know, Liberia has a big land problem. You know that story. Now, the thing here about it is that many people who have lost property don't even know that the property was in their name. They don't even know that certain assets existed that belonged to them. And they go, you know, the parable is told, the story is told of a young man who he grew up not knowing his father. But one day his father came into the picture, and before his father died, his father bequeathed him this Bible and said, he gave it to somebody to give to his father. I mean, the father gave it to somebody to give to his son and said, give this to my son. The son took the Bible and said, but wait now, this man hasn't been in my life all this time, and all he has to give me is a Bible. He took the Bible and dashed it somewhere. Dashed the Bible somewhere. He went 7 years struggling, not knowing what to do, not knowing what to make of himself, and to get by in life. Until one day, you know, a preacher man ministered to him, and he said, oh, my father gave me a Bible one day. Maybe I should go and read it. That was the first time he opened the Bible. And when he opened it, he saw deeds, he saw bank materials, he saw all the wealth that his father had that he did not know about. And just shine, the Liberian people say, shine your eyes. Just look around and shine your eyes. You don't have to go top speed running to where you're not sure where you're going. Stop, slow down, shine your eyes, look around, and see what is right before you. You know, you didn't have to go, you know, to CNN or Hollywood to complete this documentary. It was right before you all the time. Who knows whose eyes will see this documentary and who will learn from it? We walked through Cruzerville to Port Hill the other day. Some parts of the property that I had no idea existed. What if people had started to encroach on that property and start building on it? What I say, oh, those people are doing their thing, or whatever it is, you know, and willy-nilly gone. When they're building, when they will be building on valuable property that belongs to our family. You know, Liberian people especially, we don't care for our history. We don't care for where you're coming from, but it's been said over and over that those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. What? You don't know where you can never know where you're going unless you know where you're coming from. Do you know that when my parents started the Daily Observer, they didn't realize that there was another paper in the family by a similar name. The pamphlet that Albert Porte produced was called the Cruzerville Observer. Did you know that?
Yes, I knew that.
Yep. Yep. And it didn't dawn on him until they came up with the name. And Albert Porte was like, yeah, well, you know, my people is called the Cruzerville Observer, right? Yeah. So yeah, there's a purpose in everything. The purpose in everything, and only the Holy Spirit can really open your eyes uh, to see what it is really, to see that you are where you're supposed to be at a given point in time. You know, as you're saying that, what has been running through my mind for the last 2 or 3 years is that Cruiserville, the descendants of Cruiserville, have every professional skill set that is needed to develop that township. We have landscape architects, we have storytellers, journalists, we have nurses and doctors, we have, we have lawyers, we have all kinds of people. We have priests, we have all kinds of people that can play a role in doing a new plan for Cruiserville. Now, now we're documenting what Cruiserville, that the past glory of Cruiserville, the people that came on the big Cora, and how they helped shape the destiny of Liberia. Right now, going forward, we need to really now turn Cruiserville into an experience, or into a place where we can live, not just where we can be buried, because that's all it becomes now for many of our people. That when we found to bury them, we get into Cruiserville because the graveyard is not packed like Center Street. But it's not just that; it's a place where we can live and where we can thrive. The soil there is excellent. I walked through the land and I saw this monkey apple. They call it monkey apple, but it looks like a cocoa. I was getting dehydrated, and that thing provided me water and carbohydrate, water and sugar, to energize me and hydrate me for the 3 hours we walked through that bush. Right? They showed me this vine plant that when you cut piece of it, water starts flowing and it's purer than the water from the creek. So, like, are we walking through the Garden of Eden?
You know what I said?
Yeah,
I used that same description for Cruiserville. The last time I was there, I came that time Monrovia probably still filthy, but I went to Monrovia, and the place was so dirty and so filthy. And then when I went to Cruiserville, I was like, oh my God, I've entered paradise. The place so green, it's so lush, it's so quiet, the air so clean. I said to myself, if I was bringing people to Liberia, if I was going to do any tourism or bringing people to Liberia, when we get to, you come from Rowersfield, you get to the light there, the junction, I would never turn left, I would turn right.
Turn right. Yeah.
I would turn right. Because I would never let them go left, I would let them go right. So I'm glad we're talking, because this is, I think, somewhere you believe in the Holy Spirit and God moving in a mysterious way. I feel it in my spirit that this might be the beginning of something where now we got everybody on board. Everybody, when this, we need to start networking now.
The Chinese people are for the longest time, they've been breaking down the reed plants because they export them for furniture. And she was like, look, if people can make, like, the reed plant is not just good for furniture, and that's like kind of what you see here. Okay, it has firework properties. What you can do with it, but I understand that if you put fire in it, it can be very explosive. But there's so many different valuable things on the land, and in us as the people, that we cannot sit and let this place go to waste another day. So let's let's keep the conversation going.
We will.
Let's. I think we need to set up some platform to introduce everybody to everybody. I know
Yeah.
we the Port, we the best people. We have our own. We the Port and best people have their own. I don't know. I'm sure the Patmore people got their own, but we need to kind of consolidate all these things and see if even if we had a kind of if we plan a Coasaville a Coasaville United festival next year, whatever that means, or in the next couple of years, whatever it is, project that you're doing, support, and whatever other resources that may be required to do something grand at 160th end of the break, Cora.
Yes.
When I stepped away in the beginning of the conversation, I had some hot cornbread and hot rice bread that I went to go eat. Wow, Liberian food is just priceless. The I love all of it. The palm butter, the tabagi, the cassava leaf. My favorite, I can't say I have a favorite per se. I can tell you who my favorite cooks are, or my favorite chefs. Yeah, those. But honestly, the women in my family, as well as my wife, are very, very, excellent when preparing those kind of things. So, to cook a certain kind of food, you know how to cook. You have to know how to cook it well for it to even give you an impression that it should be one of your favorite foods. But so then it's not really the food that's your favorite. It's like whoever prepared it, just like that. Yeah. My aunt Muriel is an amazing cook. Sunday chop was no joke. Whether it was jollof rice, palm butter, cabbage, or beans, whatever it was, she knew how to really put it together. So we kind of spoiled. We kind of spoiled like that. Palm butter, yeah.
Yeah.
Rice bread and coconut tart are my two favorites.